tired of trying to be positive and have all of the emotions behind your affirmations? Have you ever thought that the secret actually might be to be a little less emotional? Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for today's video. You guys have asked me nonstop about robotic affirmations. I know that they are trending. I know you see them everywhere. And so in this video, we are going to cover it all. What they are, how to do them, and the science behind how it actually reprograms your subconscious mind. So for all of you naysayers, this may be the piece that helps you get on board with robotic affirmations. So let's jump into it. But before we do, if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share it with a friend who also has been having questions about robotic affirmations. So with that out of the way, let's get to it. First things first, what are robotic affirmations? Robotic affirmations are literally just repeating an affirmation on repeat over and over again like a robot. You're not doing any kind of emotion, any kind of feeling or excitement, positivity, anything like that you may be doing with other techniques like visualization, for example. I know the way that a lot of affirmations are taught are to be this kind of high vibe, in your face, like feeling on top of the world. And there's nothing wrong with that, because if you can get yourself behind that, emotion will only heighten the frequency at which you're vibrating at, but it is not required. And it was something that was really hard for me. I'm an overthinker. I'm somebody that needs to know what's going on. And sometimes faking that feeling wouldn't get me to the next manifestation that I was calling in. When I discovered robotic affirmations, it's like everything clicked for me. I didn't realize at the time that it was robotic affirmations, or what maybe they're being called robotic affirmations now. It was actually a way for me to cancel out negative thoughts that I was having. This wasn't really something that I was taught or shown in any kind of book at the time, because this was all the way back in probably 2017 when I started. It was more so that I was using robotic affirmations to cancel out and fill up my mind, as I like to call it, taking an actual mental bath in the affirmation of what I was trying to call in. So at the time I was trying to get a job, and I don't exactly remember the per word affirmation that I was using, but I know that I was wanting a remote job that was going to allow me to move. So I was saying, I have the perfect remote job. And I would say that anytime a negative thought would come up. And usually it was only about 5 times. But what I realize now is that I was almost just trying to force the negative belief out of my head and replace it with the affirmation, with the manifestation that I wanted. And so that's kind of where I started to realize how powerful and how quickly things can shift when you do robotic affirmations. So let's get into really the science behind robotic affirmations and what makes them so powerful. All right, I wrote down some notes here so that we can cover everything so I don't skip it. So the first part, the reason robotic affirmations work so well is because they harness the science of neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is just the science behind your brain rewiring. So your brain can actually both create new neural pathways and then let old neural pathways break down and die off. That is what neuroplasticity is. You can go look it up. This isn't some woo-woo technique. It is actually the science behind repeating something so much so that it creates a new synapses in your brain. It creates that new neural pathway for that belief to be embedded into your brain. Here's the analogy that I always like to use for what that kind of looks like and means for neuroplasticity in your brain. The analogy that I like to use for explaining neuroplasticity to my clients is walking through a field. When you first walk through a field, we have a hay meadow around our house. If you were to walk through that field right now, there wouldn't be a path down the center of it. You would try to walk through it. It'd probably be hard. You might not be able to exactly know where you're going. The wildflowers and the hay would be coming up around you, and you would walk that first time, and it would maybe slightly push the grass down. You could maybe see where you had been. But if you decided to do that walk every day, that exact same walk over and over and over and over again, that grass would eventually die off. That hay, the wildflowers, they would be so stomped down in the ground that it would create a path for you, and you would see a path. And not only if you did that path often enough, because we have done that here on our property, If you did that path often enough, it would be down to mud where some things wouldn't even be able to grow back into that path, at least not for this year until the next season. That's what neuroplasticity is like in the brain. It's you taking that affirmation and repeating it over and over and over and over and over again so that that new neural pathway, can be created. That's all you're doing, creating that new belief in your mind. You don't have to feel it. You don't have to believe it. You are just in the act of repeating something over and over again so that that pathway is created. And by repeating that, you are now not allowing the limiting beliefs to pop up that would be working against your manifestation. So for the sake of this example, let's just say it's an easy one, like I make $5,000 a month. I don't care if this is from a job, if this is from your own business, whatever it is. This works for any area of life, but for this video, we're going to say I make $5,000 a month. You are programming a pathway in your brain, a synapsis, a connection that you make $5,000 a month. You are then collapsing the negative limiting belief of you never having enough money, your bank account being at zero, feeling like money's hard to come by, because you are replacing those beliefs and not concentrating on them. You are concentrating and repeating the new belief that you want to install in your brain. That is what everyone is talking about when they say reprogramming your mind. This is that science. This is how that works. You reprogram through repetition, and you do not have to have feeling behind something to reprogram by repetition. I want you to think about driving. You have learned to drive. When you first started out, it was like, which way do I turn the blinker on and off? What pedal is the gas? What's the brake? Now, there are times that your subconscious can take over when you're driving, and you don't even realize how you got from point A to point B, because your subconscious has been repetitively taught how this is how you drive. This is what the body needs to function as. This is what we do at a stop sign. This is what we do when we enter a highway. This is what we do when we pull into our driveway. Your subconscious takes over, and I've done it before where you're like, I don't even necessarily remember getting here. And that kind of feeling of, oh my gosh, your mind takes over and directs your body what to do. That's the exact same thing that I am talking about when you're doing robotic affirmations. You are telling the subconscious mind what to program into itself so that then your body takes over to align you with the opportunities, to align you with the job applications, to make the connection of networking from the person that you didn't even remember that you were friends with, who's going to get you the job so that you can make the $5,000 a month. I make $5,000 a month. I make $5,000 a month. I make $5,000 a month. That is the whole point. So the next piece of science behind robotic affirmations and why they're so powerful is the reticular activating system, your RAS. Maybe you've heard of this, maybe you haven't. It could be completely new to you. But in simple terms, the RAS is like the filter of your life. It is telling you what is important and what isn't. You take in billions of pieces of information every day at any given time, and it is your RAS's responsibility to filter out what is important for you. For instance, you might see that you're looking at a squirrel and not realize that your RAS has also seen the 10 trees that are in your peripheral that aren't mattering to you in that moment. You don't naturally clock each individual tree. It's not like you're like, tree, 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 tree. Your brain could tell you there's a row of trees here, but your RAS's responsibility is to say, that's not important for what we need right now. That's the same thing when you decide that you're gonna buy a blue car. And maybe it's a specific blue color that you haven't seen. Maybe it's the color of this shirt, which isn't a super common color for a car. But then you decide, oh, I think I want to buy a car like that. And you start seeing that blue color everywhere. You maybe see it in other cars, you see it in t-shirts, you see it in a wild bird outside, you see it in a pair of tennis shoes. You see that color everywhere because your brain has told your RAS this is important at this time. This color blue is something we are looking for. And even though you're looking for it maybe in a car, you're going to see it everywhere. That's the exact same thing when you start, I make $5,000 a month. I make $5,000 a month. I make $5,000 a month. Your RAS will then say, this kind of job is going to provide that kind of salary. Maybe it's going to give you the idea of starting the business that you keep forgetting to start, and oh yeah, I've got that idea. Maybe it's to check in on some stocks that you had that you forgot about. Whatever it is, your brain realizes making $5,000 a month is extremely important. I am going to show her all of the opportunities for her to make $5,000 a month. It is then up to you to follow through, to call the person, to apply for the job, to log into your Fidelity account. That is the whole point of your RAS. It is saying, brain has said this is important. I want to show her more of what's important to her. That's all you're doing. This isn't some of like crazy, insane, like made up woo-woo, living on a spaceship kind of scenario. This is actual science. That's what the whole point of your RAS is to filter in what is important to you. And when you repeat to your subconscious mind what you are calling in, it now sees that as important, and your RAS will start feeding you more opportunities, more alignment, more synchronicities, more connections, more serendipities, whatever you want to call it. It will start feeding those to you so that you can see how you can make that $5,000 a month. And the last piece of science behind why robotic affirmations work for you, you are removing the emotional trigger from something so that it can bypass your conscious mind. So when you say something with a high intense emotional state, so maybe we're going for the $5,000 a month. If you were going around excited out of your mind, I make $5,000 a month. Isn't it great I make $5,000 a month? It gives your brain the ability, your conscious mind, to say, no, we don't. We have $22 in our account. What are you talking about? It is telling you because your conscious mind is trying to filter out what is right and wrong for you in that moment. Removing the emotional piece of it bypasses your conscious mind. That is why something like driving can work without your conscious mind telling you you can't do this. In the example of driving that I gave, you didn't have to be in a heightened emotional state to learn how to drive. Although some of you may have. I remember the first time I was learning to drive, and we were driving down in the neighborhood, and I took my hands off the wheel to tuck my hair behind my ears. As you can tell, I always touch and play with my hair. My mother was mortified. But other than that, it was a pretty emotionless kind of experience learning to drive, and I didn't need to be pressing on the brake and say, I'm pressing on the brake, I'm pressing on the brake. By repetitively doing it, my brain took it in and understood, this is how you drive, this is how we're doing it. That's the whole point of robotic affirming without emotion. You are taking out the emotional trigger that would tell your conscious mind, this isn't true, this doesn't feel right, and the conscious mind battling you on it. When you start to replace it with robotic affirmations, you allow it to skip that emotional trigger, so your conscious mind decides, all right, this is fine, it is what it is. When you start to learn something new, there's not an emotional trigger behind that. You just read the same flashcards over and over again. You read the highlighted text over and over again, and the brain doesn't say, that's not true, that's not, what are you talking about? 4 plus 4 isn't 8. No, it takes that information in, embeds it in your brain, and now you don't even think twice when somebody's like, what's 4 plus 4? What's 2 times 4? Whatever it is, you immediately know because it's part of your subconscious. It's moved past that, and you are able to quickly and easily pick that up because you have been repetitively studying and taking in new information. It's the same way with your robotic affirmations. You are repetitively saying those affirmations so that it becomes part of both your subconscious and your conscious mind. My very first kind of, I guess, forte into repetitive or robotic affirmations was everything always works out for me. That was something that I started years ago. It's now become a joke among my friends, my family, because I say it all the time because I know it's true. And I also love that rubbing off on people, and it has, because people will say that and repeat that back to me when something good works out, and they're like, well, that everything works out for me. So of course that, landed for me, or I got that job, or I got that girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. That was my first solid, this is what robotic affirmations are. I did an umbrella affirmation. An umbrella affirmation is something that's all encompassing. It's not so much just for a specific manifestation. Everything falls under that umbrella. Everything always works out for me. And I remember I started saying that because I was stressed out. It was in 2020, and we had opened up our brick and mortar boutique. Well, we opened it up in November of 2019, and then the pandemic happened, and obviously we had to close our store down for several months. So that was a really stressful time for me, and that's when I started on that affirmation, and literally everything has worked out for me since. And I say that I don't really have to repeat it to myself ever at all, unless I'm kind of in a stressed out state about something new that's popped up. I did the video about our insurance for our investment property. I had to kind of dabble with it just a few times to remind myself, and it immediately kicked back up, and it took 30 seconds of me repeating that to myself for me to kind of regulate myself. All right, now for the important information. You want to know how you can implement this into your life. What does that look like? Do you have to do it all day long? How do you do this? I suggest picking an affirmation. Generally, one like an umbrella affirmation is really great to start with because it will actually trickle out into multiple areas of your life, but you can definitely do a specific one. In this case, I make $5,000 a month. That's totally fine. You can choose either one. It's up to you. Just pick one, and I suggest not picking one that's very long so that you don't forget it, and it's easier to keep on the loop. You know, in this example, I make $5,000 a month. The one I gave about everything always works out for me. Those are pretty quick affirmations. I wouldn't make it something that's like 3 sentences long. It's kind of hard to be repetitive at that point, and it's not as easy to kind of make that emotionless because you're concentrating on it. And instead, you want something that can just be said like a robot in the back of your head. I would suggest saying this affirmation as much and as often as you can. I know that sounds crazy, but I don't like to just sit for 5 to 10 minutes and say an affirmation. I literally will just say that affirmation if I'm in the shower, if I'm driving, if I'm doing the dishes, if I'm folding laundry, when I'm falling asleep. Falling asleep and waking up are the 2 times that I require that you say your robotic affirmations. That is actually a requirement for me, simply because your mind is actually in full-blown open receiving mode as you're falling asleep and as you're waking up. The crazy part is, I am telling you, this has happened for, I can't tell you how many clients. When you say it as you're falling asleep, and you've done it for 3 or 4 days in a row, kind of falling asleep. And if you're somebody that kind of will wake up and turn over, wake up and get a drink, and you're kind of in that like in and out, I say my affirmations so much that my brain, my subconscious is thinking that when I come to for that momentary sip of water, for turning over, for fluffing my pillow, for pulling up the covers, my brain is already on loop thinking my affirmation. I vividly remember the first time it happened when I started Everything Works Out for Me. I thought I was losing my mind because I had programmed my mind so dang hard that it was repeating it when I was barely conscious. When I was rolling over in bed, in this bed, I was like, oh, okay, it's working. Your subconscious is taking it on. So say it as often as you can, but my absolute requirement is the 5 minutes as you put your phone down, you turn your fan on, you close your eyes, start your affirmation. I want you starting it right then and there, and then as soon as you can think about it when you wake up. I understand you're half groggy. As soon as you've hit snooze for the last time, if that's the first that you can start thinking about it, that's completely fine. Those 2 I require. 2 to 5 minutes on each, because sometimes you fall asleep quickly, whatever. If you wake up stressed out about your manifestation, so the $5,000 a month, you're worried about your bank account, you're saying it. When you are doing the dishes, when you're walking, when you are showering, when you're blow drying your hair, when you have a negative thought, you are replacing it with your affirmation. I want you saying it as often as possible. And what's crazy is you will realize you'll be scrubbing a pan, and maybe you're like, looking over, your husband's doing something, your kid's doing something, and you realize that your brain is already thinking it without you having to force it to think it. That is when you know that your affirmation is starting to sink in, and that is when you double down harder, because I truly believe a robotic affirmation energy compounds. When you start to realize, oh, my brain's thinking this, double down, because that is when the manifestation will come in like a pizza delivery bat out of hell. It will come in so freaking fast if you buckle up and keep going, because a lot of people think like, oh, my brain took it, I can cut. Do not stop until that has shown up in your life and you believe it to your core. So I want you to keep buckling down. The thing is, if that's not going to work for you, I want you to do at least a 10-minute session of repeating your affirmation to yourself. You can do it in the morning, evening, at lunch, in your car. I don't care. If you're not going to do it as often as possible, 10 minutes a day is the bare minimum. And I want you to think about 10 minutes of your day when you are living 23 hours and 50 minutes of the rest of the day, possibly not thinking in the favor of your affirmation. That's why you need to dedicate time. If you are not somebody who's going to say it often all the time, you have to dedicate some time to it. Either one's fine. I've had success on both. I've tried both because I talk to my clients about this and I coach people on it, and either one works. It's up to you. But if it were me, I would be saying it as often as possible, no matter what. I put up a Q&A box on my Instagram about robotic affirmations, and I wrote down the top common questions. So we'll go over those because I know this video is getting a little long, and we'll wrap it up. So do you have to sound completely emotionless? Can you be happy? You can do whatever you want to do. I just say my affirmations kind of monotone because it's easy. You can make it kind of sing-songy if that helps, like I make 5K a month, I make 5K a month, I make 5K a month, whatever it is, you can say it. I make 5K a month, I make 5K a month, I make 5K a month, I make 5K a month. It doesn't matter, whatever works for you, either one's fine. How long should I do them each day? Like I said, you have to either do a 10-minute dedicated session or do them as often as possible. Because if you knew that you were going to get your manifestation by saying this affirmation, you can't convince me that you wouldn't be saying that all day. If I said, think about your affirmation, say your affirmation all day long, and I guarantee that I'm going to give you 5K a month, you'd have no problem saying your affirmation all day long. Do whatever you want, but I suggest as often as possible until you kind of come out of it. If you're blow drying your hair, you're saying your affirmation, and maybe you get a text and you kind of get side, okay, that's fine. Like you move on with your day. And then you're cooking dinner and you're in there chopping vegetables, and then one of your kids comes in as you're saying your affirmation. You've been chopping an onion, saying your affirmation, and your kid asks you a question and you move on. That's what I mean when I say as often as possible. It's not that you have to go nonstop and that you have to stop doing other things. Just say it until that concentration's broken, and then pick it up the next time that you're able to. How many affirmations can you do at a time? I would suggest doing one at a time. The thing is, when you dedicate time to this so quickly, you can either do an umbrella affirmation that will trickle out for you, and that's great. Go ahead. Everything always works out for me. I'm always blessed with money. Money falls into my lap every day. Miracles happen to me daily. Whatever. Those can be, you can do an umbrella affirmation if that makes you feel better to get a bunch of different things going. Or just stick with the one and do it until you get it. Do it till it's in your core. And then you start on your next affirmation. Everything always works out for me. It was an affirmation for me 5-6 years ago. That's not my affirmation anymore, but it's part of who I am. I have moved on and I've manifested insane things. A specific one that I did was, I'm a real estate investor. That was a big goal for me. And we bought a real estate property in 2022, and that was something that I really honed in on. And now I think it's working a little too well because I would like to do some other things with some of our extra money, and my husband is trying to buy another property, which is first world problems, but that is the power of manifestation. You get to have problems that are problems because of your manifestation. So take that as you will. When will I start to see results? You will start to see things shifting, subtle moods and opportunities and things, usually within 3 days. I've never had anyone not see something start moving. You might see some movement towards maybe, I have 5K a month or I make 5K a month. You might get a $20 bill randomly given to you because of a refund. You might get a free coffee. You might hear back from a job, but the job doesn't pay what you want it to pay, but you hadn't heard from any other jobs before that. Whatever it is, you'll start seeing movement usually within 72 hours. I personally have not had anything that I've wanted to manifest take longer than 2 to 3 weeks. And those were for very big things that I was really working through on. And I knew that. And part of that is because I believe that they're really big things, which in actuality they are not. But I have never had anyone have to take months to get something. But even if you had to commit 30 days to saying an affirmation to get what you wanted, would you not do it? I would. Do you have to believe the affirmations for them to work? No, you do not. That's the whole point. If you believe them, you'd already have what you want. If you believe something, you would already have the 5K a month. You'd already have the specific person. You'd already have the lucky girl energy in your life. You'd already have it if you believed it. That's the whole point of affirmations. It's not, robotic affirmations are there to reprogram your mind, to get into that inner knowing, that belief. So that's what's making the assumption for you, is the repetition. So no, you don't have to believe them. Can you do robotic affirmations in your head, or do they have to be out loud? I like a combo of both. If I'm by myself, they're getting said out loud. If I'm in the shower, they're getting said out loud. When I'm blow drying my hair, they're getting said out loud. If I'm cooking and my husband's on a call, or I'm somewhere where I can't, I'm sitting in a doctor's office, it gets said in my head. If you can say it out loud, I say go for it. A lot of people saying and hearing their own voice works really well. I also know some people kind of can't really take something in if they're not hearing it. So say it out loud, but in your head works just as well. Obviously, when you're falling asleep, when you're waking up, it's not out loud. And a lot of people have somebody sleeping near them or whatever. Either one works for you. What if I get bored? That's literally the point. When you start getting bored, it's because it's become so repetitive. Your subconscious is like, all right, we're doing it. And that's exactly what I said when I said double down. Do not stop. Compound that dang energy. Get your manifestation. And then we're going to move on to one that you're not bored with, because you're going to be calling in something new. And then what was the best time to do it? Like I said, 1000% as you're falling asleep, when you're waking up. Anything monotonous, if you're somebody that goes for a walk outside and you can get into that zone and you're not thinking of other stuff. I know being in nature works for a lot of people. Anything like that works. Do it when you can, as often as possible. If not, do that 10 minutes a day. And if I was going to do it, I'd be doing the 10 minutes as soon as I woke up in the morning to prime myself for the day. But either way, as often as possible, whenever is possible, when it's something that you don't really have to think too hard about. And then if not, 10 minutes a day in the morning. That's all I have on robotic affirmations. But my personal challenge to you is to give yourself 10 days to see what happens towards your manifestation coming in. If you start doing robotic affirmation and you take the tips that I have given you, the steps that I have given you, and you start implementing it today, not tomorrow, not next week, right now, today. We are talking about a completely free technique that you can do often, that doesn't take you away from your daily duties of your life. You can start changing things today. So you're going to do it for 10 days, and then I want you to come back and let me know what shifts for you in the comments. But in the meantime, go ahead and like this video, subscribe, and drop your affirmation in the comments so that you can come back and tell me how things have shifted for you. But in the meantime, thanks for being here. I'll see you next week.